Well, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Juan Cotto touching bases with you from the historic Columbia City Theater on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio. World. And we have a very, very special guest, a very, very interesting guest. I'm always interested in candidates who do this the second time. I remember I was very young the first time. But Joe Mallahan, welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio.
Thanks, Juan. It's great to reconnect. I'm not sure we've seen each other face to face since back then. I mean, we follow each other on social.
Absolutely. See y'all going on.
Great pleasure to see you.
You see, I'm busy. I'm juggling almost two teenagers now. The daughter is 12 and the son is 17.
God bless you.
So and people, when I was in the city council final last year. And I was like, I was trying to intimidate the city council,
right? Because
they had pretty been much, they had pretty much been swayed by the business community who they were going to support. I was like, I was doing the Nikita Khrushchev pound on the table. I'm going to run if I'm the only one that's done a citywide campaign like this. And then obviously they were like, oh, Juan, go ahead and whatever. And they selected Tanya, who's a great friend, by the way. And so Tanya gets selected, but they came back to me back in December, and they're like, we thought about it. We'd like you to run again. Would you consider running against Alexis? And I was like, are you kidding me? I got two teenagers, man. I can't.
Absolutely.
Can barely get out of the house.
Well, that's the nice thing about me. I'm 62.
You're a young 62.
No, I got lots and lots of energy, but my kids are all grown up, and my wife's completely like, Joe, you do what you have to do. I'm supporting you. And
that's 90% of the battle.
Yeah. And I'm retired. So I'm literally working 12 hours a day because that's my job right now, is running for mayor. And we've got a really strong retail game. And I'm starting to encounter people at rail stops and farmers markets. Man, this is like the third time I've seen you.
You see the same people on the way up as you do on the way down sometimes.
There you go.
Let me ask you this. And like I said, I'm always intrigued by people who do it again.
Yeah.
I remember very young when Paul Schell did it the first time.
Right.
And he did not win his son. I think that was against Royer? What he ran against Royer back in the day, or was it against Ullman? One of those when I was a kid.
It was West. Yeah.
It was against West.
I think so.
And then so he disappears for many years, and all of a sudden he comes back.
Yeah.
And then obviously Michael McGinn did it a couple times. Michael McGinn ran one time, disappeared for a while, came back, he won, then disappeared, then he came back and tried to run again. It's just really interesting how the politics in Seattle is set up, especially at the executive level. And here's Joe Mallahan. You run in 2010, wasn't it? Or 209.
Yeah.
And you show very well. You have a very spirited race against Michael McGinn at the end. And that was when the end of Greg Nichols' era. And disappear for a few years, and now you're still a bright young guy, and you want to come back and do this.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I had some family things going on that didn't really allow me to run for a while. I would have loved to run, 4 years after McGinn beat me, but I just wasn't in a position. And then I went back to T-Mobile. I had left T-Mobile and had a huge job working really hard. And suddenly there was just an opportunity to get out at in March. And I said, man, I got to look and see who's in this mayor's race, because I'm disappointed in Bruce. And I just decided I'm kind of the only guy who could beat him in the general. And so I jumped in. I jumped in a little late. I'm a little bit on my back foot. But again, the advantages of having 12 hours a day to be on the street. I'm not on the street all 12 hours. I'm also calling people, asking them for money.
There is that.
Yeah,
there is that.
But I think, the media doesn't quite grasp that I'm a contender. I really, truly believe I am, as I'm starting to have that experience time and time again of encountering people who've already seen me and I don't need your lit, Joe. I already got your lit. And I was at a Storm game recently, and there you're kind of yelling your name because it's a big sidewalk. Hey, I'm Joe Mallahan, I'm running for mayor. He's a Seattle resident. And I had 5 different people say, "Oh, I saw you down in Columbia City. I saw you at Rainier," or "You gave me a cold call. I haven't called you back. Let's talk for a couple minutes." That's the other thing that's always fun is when you're on the sidewalk passing out lit, and somebody stops and talks to you. You got your staff still passing stuff out, and then other people are kind of listening to the dialogue, and we're just doing it full time. Farmers markets, all sorts of stuff like that. I got to hit West Seattle a little harder, but otherwise we're pretty well covered. I've been, every light rail stop, except right down in downtown where it's kind of commuters. But everywhere from Northgate down to Rainier Beach, except for 2 or 3 stops downtown, I've hit at least 2, many times 3 times. My favorite is Beacon Hill. And the reason is,
tell me.
The only way you can get to Beacon Hill platform is to take an elevator.
A rather long, lengthy elevator ride too.
Right, but people have 15 seconds where they're standing around where you can kind of muscle them into taking a piece of lit. That's not actually muscle, but they're not rushing down the escalators. But anyway, we've passed out thousands and thousands of pieces of my literature. A lot of people get halfway down the escalator or down the sidewalk and turn around and come back and say, "Hey, I like what you're saying here. I am disappointed in the current mayor. Tell me more about yourself." So it's been fantastic, but it's all organic.
Let's go back 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
That extra year doesn't make a big difference. 2009 was the actual election. What the difference in the city at the time versus now, and it's quite different. The difference in the 2 particular campaigns, and tell us how that has influenced this current candidate, Joe Mallahan.
Sure. Well, the first time I ran, I was 45 or something. I was thinking, I'd really like to have a political career, and it seems like there's an opportunity for change in Seattle. Greg Nichols had already served 8 years, so doing a 3rd term seemed a little bit of a stretch. And so I jumped in, and quite frankly, I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
But your first campaign, you never really did.
Yeah. But I had great people working with me, and we did okay. And I really attacked Greg on stuff that when I compare it to what I have to say about our current mayor, we're tiny little things. Like I beat him up about the snowstorm and things, but it was effective. And but I will tell you, to compare and contrast, I'm a way better candidate this time around. And most importantly, because I got so much feedback from friends the first time, I said, "Joe, your team is managing you too much. Just be yourself." Joe Mallahan's got a certain personality, a certain warmth. Right. You sound like Al Gore on the TV. So, just be yourself. And that's what I'm doing. And it's working. I love people. I love meeting strangers. I love when somebody, flips me a little bit of grief. Right. And I kind of try to bring them around. That's one thing I've done really successfully in my career. I like to tell people I'm the change maker that Seattle needs. I've made change in the community, in mid-sized business. I've turned around a couple of mid-sized businesses, and then I made huge change at T-Mobile, particularly to the benefit of low-income customers, by having the ability to have people kind of resist me. And then bring them around. And I either bring them around by, again, because I got a big heart, I love people. I'll talk to you. Let's figure this problem out. Or by realizing, they actually have a better solution. I was wrong. They do have a better solution. So let me get on their train and let's move this thing forward. And that's worked fantastically for me. But again, out on the street, when I run into that sort of confrontational person, 50% of the time, everybody's a little bit in a hurry to get on the train, but 50% of the time I turn them around. And then there's a whole bunch of people that just like the message to start with.
You bring up something so important. And I think that for people who have run for office, or people who are maybe even considering running for office, that whole first term, the first campaign.
Yeah.
And in 1998, when I ran for the state legislature, running in Sharon Tanico Santos and the dentist that was in the race. We had 6 people in this race down here, and it's such a weird perception of yourself. And I remember one time on one of the mailings that we did, there was a word spelled wrong, and I flipped into this whole thing of perfection, and I wasn't being myself. And my mom, she finally came down and spent some time with me. And she said, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, "Well, people see that I can't spell on the words." And she said, "You spelled all those words wrong in Cali. You couldn't spell in school.
Right.
What's wrong with you?" And it was, it was so helpful. It kind of snapped me back into going back, instead of trying to be this perfect robotic thing, to the candidate that people expected you to be and want you to be.
Right. Yeah.
And you're not perfect.
No, right. And if you're perfect, you're not relatable. So, I mean, seriously. And all great change is about relations. One thing I learned, I was a community organizer. I'm from Everett, the pearl of the Northwest. And I went to school at UW, but I ended up at University of Chicago for an MBA. And when I graduated that MBA, I got into community organizing, the same group as Barack Obama, the Industrial Areas Foundation. And what they taught us was that all movements are relational. They taught us to do 45-minute interpersonal one-on-one meetings with people we're trying to recruit into this organization, and just share with each other honestly, okay, what are your big concerns? What are you trying to accomplish in life? And where are you struggling? And that relationship establishes this bond, and you look for mutual self-interest. We built a 10,000 person community organization in Chicago. This was like 1998 or something, and launched. I think it's still there today, and advocating for immigrants and for low-income people and housing, and they've had a huge impact. But my huge takeaway there was it's all about relationship. The way you make change is you build community one person at a time. So every time I'm in a conversation with a voter on the street, if they're going a little long and asking me, like I'm looking around all these other people I'm not able to talk to, like this is important. I need to establish relationships, and that's how I plan to govern.
It's fun to me. I was we were just out front, and you had your campaign manager Cisco, and we're out talking as you came in, and coordinating for an event that is coming up, and you said something in regards to you got an email or how the emails right now are being constructed or being disseminated within your organization, because there's only a couple of you, as opposed to having some of these campaigns that are very, very well funded. They have multiple people, and they have people who probably worked on July 4th as opposed to going on a vacation. But it's fun. It's fun to be a part of a homespun kind of campaign this way. Tell us about how that's going. Tell us about the campaign. Tell us about how you guys are working together.
Sure.
And building them.
We actually do have 6 or 7 people on staff, and I have raised $100,000, just from people who know and love me. And so, I mean,
some of them probably tried to stick it to you too.
Yeah, right. We're
going to get you elected mayor.
It's amazing, and I think this is so tragic, how often people say, "Why the hell would you ever want that job?" And there is a lot of toxicity in City Hall and among the press. It's we live in clickbait world these days, so it's always more interesting to say something bad about somebody and sort of inflammatory. But again, I have built a really hard nose and a thick skin based on all the change that I've driven in all these different companies. I've had so many times when somebody's trying to cut my legs off, but I bring them around. I had a wonderful fundraiser up on Queen Anne. A lovely friend of mine, him and his husband did a fundraiser. They had the Fraser Crane view, and it was just beautiful. But John Beer is the name of the guy. He gets up and introduces me to his friends he'd invited. He goes, "Joe Mallahan and I used to be mortal enemies," something like that. And it's true. Like when we were both at T-Mobile, I had an idea that I brought to him. He resisted that idea, and we kind of had to fight it out. And I quite frankly, I don't remember exactly how we resolved it, but then we became great friends. And then at one point, he became my boss, actually. And we did great things together. But I think that's a great proof point for my leadership style, that a guy that, introduces me as former mortal enemy is a supporter of mine.
Joe, what is it about the nature of Seattle politics, and it is Joe Mallahan, mayoral candidate again for the first time in 16 years. Joe Mallahan for mayor on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. What is it about Seattle politics? Paul Schell had that position. When he left, he really was almost despised. Greg Nichols came in for 8 years, had the position. When he left, and you brought up the snow situation, the Sonics, he left almost despised. Ed Murray comes in, takes the. I'm sorry. Michael McGinn comes in, and Michael, who's this community activist, he's a leftist. To a major degree, he leaves. He's almost despised, and the jokes about it. Ed Murray comes in, he leaves. Despised. Jenny Durkin, who people had been and the family, almost like the Kennedy family here, and people had been wanting Jenny Durkin, this powerful attorney, LGBTQ, this lesbian woman to come in, and she'll get the city right. And I remember making a speech for her in the 37th district, and someone said, Juan for mayor. And they said, no, we like him. Jenny, and I was thinking to myself, Jesus, it's not that bad. Jenny goes and runs, and 4 years later, she's almost despised.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Well, you just listed a lot of mayors, and if I could say, I don't know Jenny well, but I think she was an amazing federal prosecutor, and she may not have quite had the management experience, and then she had bad luck with George Floyd and our reaction there, and then Nichols I don't think was so despised. I mean, Nichols and I became buddies, so maybe I got a little tender spot in my heart for him. Ed Murray it's right to despise Ed because of his sexual predatory behavior, and I think we need to remember to call that out. That people in power have huge power, and sometimes they abuse that power at the very personal expense of young people or people of a different gender who have less power, a different gender orientation, and that's just that's unacceptable. So but going down the list, I think Paul Schell, it was the World Trade Organization fiasco, and you can blame a mayor for that, but that was just sort of bad luck for him. And I think we've had a lot of well-intended people, and I think Seattle did great things over time. I think right now we're really not doing great, and COVID set us back, and our reaction to George Floyd and how it kind of destroyed the police department, and the cops I think have on sort of victim glasses right now, some of them, and then we're just perpetually understaffed, so we're not accomplishing public safety. That's hard stuff, and you need a really strong activist mayor with leadership and a vision, and the homelessness crisis as well. I mean, I think the vast majority of those folks who are unhoused today are suffering addiction. And, we focus on building more housing, which is hugely important, but it's just unacceptable that we've got 5 or 6 or 7,000 people on the streets using drugs, right in the public space. And we're not caring for those people. 400 of them died from overdoses in the last year. And who knows how many police and firefighter recoveries we had from overdoses by them, carrying around the equipment to get folks back to life. But it is truly a humanitarian crisis. And, Seattle's got great values. Our voters pass every levy we put in front of them. We're very, very generous. And we're not getting a return on that investment. I think we're badly spending a lot of our homelessness money, and we got to fix that. And one of my big fixes, if I could continue to ramble, is tiny home villages. Tiny home villages have been deployed on big scale in Baltimore and Detroit and Austin, Texas, to fantastic effect. There have even been academic studies that show how effective it is. Tiny homes in Seattle work okay, but we don't have very many of them. I was in a debate or an interview with Bruce Harrell at the Stranger headquarters, and I said we need to add, like 3,000 more tiny homes in tiny home villages. And the mayor said, City of Seattle has 85% of all tiny homes. It's time for the county to do more. I'm saying, Mayor, the problem is here. It's our problem. Are you saying you're not going to build any more tiny homes, which is in fact what's happened. Like there's 17 permits out there for villages to be deployed. And the mayor and the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, which reports to the mayor and the executive, have not facilitated getting to permits. And then you hear it right out of the leader's mouth. Oh yeah, the county should be doing more. What kind of leadership is that? He just doesn't take that problem seriously. And I'm really doubling down on it. I've started to visit people suffering addiction on the street. I went with an outreach social worker and literally sat down on the curb and talked to people who are suffering addiction and asked them, hey, tell me your story. Are you using? Are you addicted? Do you want a path out? Tim here with me. He's been clean 6 years and he can put you in a recovery program tomorrow. And, we did that. We handed out 50 of Tim's cards. The next day, two people went into treatment. So 2 out of 50 is not great, but if Tim's out there every day doing that, and there's enough Tims, we can solve this thing. But again, you really can't. So Tim's model is actually get the folks into treatment and then into housing. But my model would be it's slightly different. Get them into tiny homes or other emergency transitional housing. Let them recover a little bit from the trauma of homelessness, and then press them to get into treatment. Which raises, I'm using that term, press them. There is a little bit of a attitude or a philosophy in Seattle that's a lot of people hold, which is, just do a harm reduction. Give them food, give them shelter, give them things they need, but they need to come to the conclusion to do treatment. What I know from my experience as a member of Al-Anon, the way you get people into treatment is you get a group of folks together and you confront them and say, man, you got to get it. You're going to kill yourself. And a lot of these homeless folks are individuals, right? They're out there on the street. They got a tiny bit of community among other people suffering addiction, but they need support and, sort of wraparound services. And we have no vision to do that.
It's the admission of a problem until they admit,
right?
Geez, I do have a problem with this.
I think they do know they have a problem. They need to be told, look, you're going to kill yourself. And there is a path out, and aren't you better at what I have been coached to say is, aren't you better than your addiction? Don't you want to get a path out of this? And then most folks say yes, and then they flail around, which is natural. And right now, again, in an environment where they're allowed to sit on the street and have community per se with other users, they're going to be less incentivized to get the problem fixed.
How does your experience as a business executive help?
Well, as a business, I don't know what I would say.
Or does it?
Well, I mean, one thing I'll never say, oh, the government should be run like a business. That's just bullshit. It's a completely different animal, and there's huge inefficiencies in government. There's huge inefficiencies in big companies too. I was a management consultant. I've seen 100 different companies in the United States and Japan, and they all have big inefficiencies. I mean, you're always working to fix that stuff. But what I would say though is, in my management experience, I've really been a change maker. I'm always innovating, or I'm finding people who innovate, and I'm moving their projects forward. And that's what I think you need. And a change maker leader is somebody who literally gets shoulder to shoulder with the front line, or in this case, shoulder to shoulder with the folks suffering addiction, and with the social workers trying to fix the problem. I'm always on the front line asking people, how do we fix this problem? I ran a home improvement retailer in Chicago, and I was a CEO, and I went and worked the midnight shift for a week in the warehouse just to see what those guys were dealing with, and let them just come out real honestly to tell me what was broken. We fixed everything. We tripled the profitability of that company in a matter of 1 year. At T-Mobile, I traveled to over 10, 12 customer service centers, and I sit right next to the customer service rep and have them take a phone call from a customer. We listen together to the customer's experience, and we talk afterwards. And then I also bring them into a group of like a focus group of customer care reps. And I say, okay, I'm trying to solve this problem. Low-income people have bad credit, and therefore they don't qualify for these plans. How can we solve this? And there was a young person in Colorado Springs, Colorado, I'll never forget this, gave me this idea, Of course, that's what we should do. And I'm going to go into the details, but we brought that back to Seattle, to T-Mobile headquarters. And I mustered like 500 people on a team with a partner, a guy named Adrian Hurtich. And he and I, we launched this highly technical product with a combination of, IT people, engineering, training, customer service, and retail and marketing. And we launched this product. And in the course of the first year, we had over 10 million incremental customers, which was great for T-Mobile, but it completely changed the industry for poor people. Today, poor people and rich people all get the same wireless rates. Rich people get a little bit better financing on their devices. But, we've also there's all kinds of lower cost, high quality smartphones out there. So the experience for a poor person today versus 20 years ago, because I am an old man, I've been in the business long time, is radically different.
Funny how that happened.
Yeah. But I mean, and that crossed the whole industry. When T-Mobile succeeded so dramatically, everybody else replicated that.
In about a 90-second answer, what do you think that brings that you in this current situation
So again,
at the mayor's office?
So just talk about the homelessness situation. I'd love to talk about the police a little bit more in a minute, but there are a couple hundred different organizations that receive funding from the city to address homelessness. And there's treatment, there's mental health stuff, which is very important. There's building housing, there's running housing, there's providing wraparound services. And I think there's an opportunity to really understand and bring people together and think through what actually is most effective. In my opinion, and it's a little bit of an ignorant opinion, I haven't been serving the homeless for the last decade, but in my opinion, we are too focused on harm reduction and not adequately focused on getting folks into shelter, letting them recover from the trauma of homelessness, and then pressing them, encouraging them to get services. That's my overall, overarching vision. But there's a ton for me to learn. But I just think there's got to be huge efficiencies we can drive there. And one imperative is to set out a vision. We're going to get everybody a bed. We're going to get folks off the street and in some sort of housing.
For the first time in 16 years, sweet 16, so to speak. 16, imagine when you last ran, if there was a baby born in that time frame, they are now 16 years old. They are going to be in their junior year of high school.
They're working on my campaign.
And a lot of them are working on this campaign. He is Joe Mallahan. He is running for mayor. And he has come to chat with us on your community radio station, Juan on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We'll be back right after this break.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not stopping a Mercer Island street brawl, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Sediment cleanup of the lower Duwamish River has begun. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the members of the Lower Duwamish Waterway Group, which includes King County, the City of Seattle, and Boeing, have begun sediment cleanup of the Lower Duwamish Waterfall Superfund site. This important environmental project will address sediment pollution and help restore the health of the Duwamish River. Starting on the waterway's upper reach, construction activities extend from the South 102nd Street Bridge down straight to the Duwamish Waterway Park. Over the next 3 years, in-water activities will occur from October to February, ending in February 2027. Visit ldwg.org to learn about the upper reach cleanup and sign up for email updates.
Women are not an homogenous group.
We face discrimination differently depending on factors such as ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, and more.
Rainier Avenue Radio is proud to amplify women's voices.
They are the experts of their own lives, initiating conversations within their community about challenges they face, the solutions they're working on, and the opportunities they see.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 for Women's Voices on Air. We know our challenges. We are the experts of our lives.
We are master multitaskers, prioritizing our family, friends, and our faith above our own needs.
Our needs and voices are too often overlooked.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. for Women's Voices on Air.
We tell our stories in our own way.
Hey, community. Listen to New Hope Missionary Baptist Church every Sunday, 10:45 a.m.
We invite you to get up and call a friend and tell them that New Hope is on live. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And now, our pastor, the Reverend Dr. Robert L. Jeffrey Sr.
Everybody clap your hand, come on. Listen to New Hope Missionary Baptist Church every Sunday, 10:45 a.m.
Love food? Here's some storage tips to keep it fresh longer. Store cut fruits and vegetables in the fridge. Place in reusable containers. Keep bread in the freezer for longer storage. 40% of food in the U.S. goes uneaten. Save money, save food, save the planet. Visit Seattle Public Utilities for more tips.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
We are back on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Juan on Rainier. I rode a Lime bike from Leschi and rode up the opposite way I was supposed to ride on Rainier Avenue, but being a veteran of growing up down here, people didn't hit me.
I was gonna say that's pretty dicey.
You have to be real. Well, and they've changed all those streets out there, such a have the bus lane, and so I felt very comfortable riding up the left-hand side. Should have been on the other side, but I've been taking advantage of those Lime bikes, Joe.
Yeah. I like the little ones that don't have
scooters.
pedals.
The scooter.
Scooter.
No, they call it the glider.
The glider.
And they ride incredibly smooth. They get about 18 miles an hour too. This is kind of haul a little bit.
That's awesome.
Joe Mallahan, for the first time in 16 years, he ran against Michael McGinn and Greg Nichols in that race in 2009, and then he was a close race too. I mean, you were right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were right there.
I mean, I was thrilled to have made it through the primary and beat the incumbent mayor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was kind of extraordinary. And then
that's impressive. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think so. And then I let a lot of folks down. I lost to Mike. Mike did a great job of kind of framing. Oh, he's a business person, therefore he must be Republican. In fact, the mayor's trying to do the same thing. I mean, I was a Obama organizer. I doorbelled for Obama in Indiana. I raised $20,000 this year from Washington State residents to help get out the vote efforts for Harris in North Carolina, because I know a Democratic chair there. Everybody knows I'm a. You go look at my voting record.
You're over 45 years old. You're Republican, yeah. It's just the way it is.
Don't say that, man.
I experienced it, and one of the. I mean, as you remember, last year I was on the citywide one of 100. They always make you feel really good about that. 108 people turned in applications, and we picked 8 of you. What does that mean? My therapist told me something different. Wait a minute, but if elected, Joe, you have to get along with that body. You have to get along with that body of 9 people, with a potential new person coming in. Mark Solomon, Tammy Morales stepped down earlier this year, and we are in a unique phase of city council members. They step out of the position. I don't remember that.
Well, that's
Jane Noland and George Benson and Sue Donaldson and Martha Cho. They all sat in those offices for years, and only left when they were done at the end of their terms. Geez, we've had a lot of people out of this deal.
That's a big red flag. I mean, if folks with that. They have power, they have status, and to let that go midterm, we need to really understand the toxicity in the city government, and it's just unacceptable. I don't.
That's what Tammy Morales said, right? Tammy Morales said this is they don't talk to me, and she felt like she was in a bubble of her own. But many people responded back, Tammy, you were kind of aloof and didn't want to work with us.
Well, yeah, and again, if I may, I think the mayor is part of the problem. I think the mayor does not show respect to women of power. And there's a couple of fantastic articles that KUOW wrote. And when I'm out on the street and I mention it occasionally to folks, a lot of people aren't aware of it. And I strongly encourage folks to look at that. But yeah, the mayor is just, I've started to use the term, and I don't mean to go negative too much on Bruce, but since he's out there calling me a Republican, I'm calling him a misogynist. I mean, I honestly believe that he either fears or despises women who assert their opinions. And, you know, we have 15% female police officers on the police force. Women are raised in our society to be peacemakers. And I think the more females on the Seattle police force, the better. And our goal is 30%. I'm not sure why it's not 50, but it's 30%. There's only 15, and we just recruited 60 new recruits, and I'm excited about those new recruits, but there's only 2 women. That's like 3%.
You don't mean to call him a misogynist?
I do mean to call him a misogynist. I mean, you look at how he treated his lesbian niece, Misha Harrell, who, you know, she came out long after leaving his administration and said, you know what, I need to tell this story. I was made fun of, you know, I was called names, I was sidelined, I wasn't in meetings. Manisha, Ms. Harrell, because, you know, with my title, I should have been in these meetings. And then even Bruce's staff admitted, oh yeah, we did have a joking name for her. I can't remember what it is. Come on, you're joking. Can you imagine being in a work environment where somebody's got a joking nickname for you?
Well, especially as a family member. You know, I'm sorry. That was the thing when I had what was it? No Fun, Manisha, NFM or something like that. But it
may have meant something much worse than that.
It could have.
The other thing
but,
is,
but when that's a family member, you're supposed to stop that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, every human being deserves dignity and respect, and that was not exhibited to her. 6 people, you know, KUOW reporter Ashley Hiroku cites 6 people off the record who confirmed the problem that the mayor has with sidelining women and treating them badly. And
SDM, so damn mean. That's what SDM.
Okay.
But that also has connotations.
Yeah, and you know, it's always classic. A woman is a strong leader. Oh, she's she's SDM or whatever. It's absolutely inappropriate. And in Seattle, I mean, come on, we celebrate ourselves as the center of progressivism, and we've got a guy who's a little bit Trumpian when it comes to how he treats women. It's just
on the Seattle City Council, you have Sarah Nelson.
Yeah.
You have Joy Hollingsworth. You have a woman who I admire who's stepping out of there. Council member Moore.
Yeah.
Same thing. You work that hard, and
yeah.
You get there 2 years, and I understand. I mean, if she says it's health reasons, I understand how that job can create health issues. It's the low level stress that kills you, and this is definitely medium to high level stress. Yeah. But for Kathy Moore, who has been a judge, and I was saying to myself, gee whiz, I mean, to come and do the things that she's done, and then have to go up there and you endure this for a couple of years. Yeah. I'm not surprised that she stepped down.
Well, you might not be surprised, but you shouldn't be accepting of it. It's utterly something's got to change. And you know, again, I can only do what I can do, but I as I said before, I am a very loving leader, and you can ask anybody who's worked for me. It's how I develop people. You know, I hired 12 different people at senior manager, which is a fairly junior role in T-Mobile, and developed every one of them into vice president, senior vice president, CFO, president. The number 2 guy at T-Mobile, number 3 guy, depending on how you look at it, is a guy that I developed, and that's what I can bring to leadership. Is I do love people. I also
what's your secret sauce to doing that?
You know, the key is to not react when someone attacks you. Mm-hmm. I mean, not react negatively. You just get, hey, I remember very distinctly recently at T-Mobile right before I left, there was a guy who was, you know, kind of criticizing me and another person. And I let him talk for like 5 minutes. I said, "Hey, Joe," I'll call him Joe. "You realize you just called us freaking idiots. You didn't say it exactly, but what you just said, you said, we don't know what the heck we're doing. Is that fair? Is that really what you mean to say to us?" And the guy calmed down and turned around and said, "Look, I love you. I want this to work out. Let's work out this together." And that's how I lead. I do it all the time. And you can read all kinds of articles like from 15 years ago about how people describe me as that sort of leader. And I continue to do that. And I think that kind of healing power can have some good with city council. And I'm quite confident. I've reached out to a few council members, and I've certainly met the competing candidates on the campaign trail. I'm sure whoever comprises the city council, I can work with very effectively.
It used to be when you ran for mayor, you needed a majority of the 9. And since they have become districts, it's almost impossible to get a majority. Are any of them supporting you?
I haven't asked for anybody's support in the political sphere. Yeah. And quite frankly, a city council, you shouldn't put a city council member in a position of supporting an opposition candidate, which is fine. But I've got a lot of people who've told me, "Joe, I support you, but I can't go public about it." And I just said, I'm not even looking for endorsements. It's just, it's so.
And no endorsement, and no endorsement campaign.
Well, I mean, first I got in a little late anyway, so like the unions were kind of tied up, and but I've so many business leaders and people inside Seattle city government have been supporting me, talking me up to others, networking, and but a lot of them are just deathly afraid to make a donation or endorse. I said, I'm just not going to do that, and that's a reflection of the career mayor too. What kind of guy is feared that much that nobody is willing to endorse me? And I'm okay with that, but I think we need to examine what that means about Bruce Harrell.
Examine what it means about Bruce Harrell, or examine what it means about our politics here. We have such an interesting. We have this one very, very, very left liberal leaning side, and I guess some of the younger candidates now, and then kind of galvanized by Pramila Jayapal. And you had Tanya Morales, I guess, was part of that. I guess you could say, and I believe it's true, Alexis Mercedes Rank and Girme Zahale and Grace Tashiko Hasagawa, they've kind of galvanized that over there. And then you've got this area that's trying to be moderate, but they're labeled conservative. And I think
right.
Where do you see yourself fitting into that, or am I describing it accurately?
The way I fit in, I'm a guy who gets things done. When I call people cold call and say, "Hey, I'm Joe Mallahan. I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I'm a Democrat that wants to deliver the goods." And the city right now is not a model of progressive governance. I want to make city of Seattle an efficient model of progressive governance. And so I don't want to get into the party thing too much, although I am a lifelong Democrat. And
over 45 though.
I got to pound this home, man. It offends me that the mayor is trying to frame me as a Republican because I voted one time for Nikki Haley to deprive Trump. Maybe I didn't tell you the story. He's telling his supporters, "Oh, Mallahan voted in 2024 for the Republican primary." Yeah, I did that to try to keep Trump from getting Washington delegates. And but if you pull my voting record, I think it goes back 15 years. Democrat. It's just a silly assertion. But so let's not joke about it. I am a lifelong Democrat, but I think the Democratic Party needs to reinvent itself and start delivering the goods. And if we aren't, again, Seattle city voters are paying $7 billion a year. Take away Seattle life, the utilities and stuff. It's about $2 billion in the general fund. We're spending every year to solve homelessness, to deliver public safety, and to drive affordability, and none of that stuff's getting accomplished. And so I don't give a damn about what somebody's politics are. What I care about is, do you love the people of Seattle? Do you want to serve the people of Seattle? Do you want to make Seattle a great city again? And I said, again, that sounds freaking Trumpian. Let me tell you.
Make Seattle great again.
Oh my God. But but yeah, we are definitely in kind of hard times, or we're just not where we want to be. And I think I'm the change maker leader that can make that happen.
You know, obviously for two people who grew up in this area, and I grew up in Rainier Valley and grew up here in Seattle.
Right.
Seattle's, went to school at O'Day High School, so I'm downtown Seattle.
Yeah,
Catholic
privileged
guy.
kid.
I am a proud. Oh, trust me, I heard. Your story isn't what I thought it was. Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went to Catholic school. It's awesome. But I remember as a kid, my brother Andy, because we're Irish twins. He's 13 months younger than me, and he was always into the bigger the better, and he loved the city of Los Angeles. It was big, and had all these different things. I remember Seattle had. I remember in the mid 1970s, early 1980s, we had gone down to like about 410,000 people.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, I see the other day, and Greg Nichols on Facebook posted the most recent, in between census. We're closing on 800,000 people.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
I mean, how, as a person who's grown up here and seen this, what does that mean to you?
Well, I remember as a kid, houses next to me being boarded up. Do you remember the FBI sign? Like,
I do.
This is the federal government has repossessed this.
We went to a lot of those houses.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, absolutely. We had camps in those.
Yes, we sure did.
Yeah. So yeah,
I remember your parents said, "Do not go to that house." Okay, Mom. See you after work.
I had one right across the street from us, and my mom and dad, were busy people. They had 9 kids, so they didn't have time to pay attention to what we got into. But we set up camp in the house right across the street. Well, the whole neighborhood, all the kids did, and it, we obviously probably caused a lot of damage too. But that was a depression that we haven't suffered since that Boeing downturn, whatever year that was, 1971 or whatever that time frame was. But but I mean, today we have sort of the opposite problem. We have so many high-tech folks earning very high wages, putting such pressure on rent and housing costs. But it's a blessing. We just need to figure out how to make that work. And where we're failing, I think we need progressive revenue sources, and we need to invest a ton in affordable housing. And we're already doing that, but I think there's other ways we can do it. I think one of the ways is to attract in developers who are leveraging federal tax credits. There's actually really great federal tax. 90% of under market housing, where you're renting to people at sub market rates because of their income levels. 90% of that in the United States is delivered by these for profit. They're companies, but they're leveraging the federal tax credits. And a guy who owned Inland just sold 2 of his projects in Seattle because he's losing money, and he sold them to this hedge fund. Mm-hmm. Who knows what the hell that hedge fund's going to do? I don't quite understand if they are still obligated to deliver those low rent units, but we're just kind of sort of falling apart at the seams because we're not managing that stuff efficiently. We're making things way too hard for builders to build. We're making it way too hard for landlords to succeed. And that has a real impact. And I do think it takes somebody with a finance background. So I have an MBA, a master's in finance. And I think we've got to figure that out and learn how to build incentives to bring those folks back in. I think if we did a little bit of municipal bonding and co-invested with it, the city owned a little piece of it too. Right. Then we could target people like in the Central District where we lost so much low-income housing. We could reestablish that through targeted investment.
It was when Teresa Mosqueda was on the city council a couple of years ago, and I thought it was really interesting, right? So on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, this is Joe Mallahan and Juan Cotto on Rainier, a show that we decided to bring back, and we love bringing in guests and having great political conversations like this about our city, about our community. And obviously one of the newsmakers currently this summer running for mayor for the first time in 16 years. He took his little break when he was a young 40-something. Now he's a mature 62-year-old guy who's doing this. And as a person who loves politics, thank you for doing it, by the way. Appreciate you getting out there. And I appreciate all the candidates who do these things. And having been there myself, I know this, but you know how much work goes into it. So we appreciate you being here today. Teresa Mosqueda a couple of years ago, and she was leading up this revenue committee. We have to attract new revenue. And I remember when I was on the little council debate stage, and one of the things they talked about, in terms of the budgeting is, Mr. Cotto, what would you do? Would you reduce anything?
Yeah.
And it seems to me in all levels of government, all the way from the federal level of government all the way down to the lowest of municipalities, we always come up with discussions about how we can generate more revenue to keep the existing tax base to pay for all this stuff.
Right.
Does anything need to go?
I think, the mayor just did this thing with the B&O tax.
Yes.
Where he's giving this break to 75% of small businesses. A lot of them don't pay B&O already because they're too small, but he's loaded it all on the top 25%. But this is revenue. So I could be running Elliott Bay Book Company, for example.
Right.
Tracy Taylor over there, she's selling books. She can't raise her prices on books. The books have prices printed on the cover, and Amazon's over selling the exact same product, and she's suffering from all the escalating costs. And so, but I actually don't know her revenue. But if I estimate the revenue of that store, she's probably in that top 25%. So this struggling bookstore, we're going to hit with additional tax. So what I think, and constitutionally, this is a little bit tricky. Sure. But I would like to adjust the B&O tax where you can deduct your labor costs and your rent costs to get more to who's actually creating and earning wealth. That would be a progressive tax system. So that's the one when you say what could go. I think the B&O tax could be modified.
Anything in the government that needs to go. Have you looked at it and said maybe there's a department or two or three or I don't want to put you in the boat of this existing administration and the leader of this existing administration because he came in and he's made some cuts.
Let me tell you that DOGE effort as a guy who's driven big efficiencies in big organizations. That DOGE effort is complete bullshit. They have no idea what they're doing, and they have no idea the value that they're destroying. Yeah. And I don't need to talk more about that, but that's not me. No, so I don't. What was the name of the governor in Texas who ran for president? He couldn't remember what he wanted to cut. I don't have any vision that there's something. I do think as I look at the homelessness spend, it's highly inefficient, and there's so many providers. There's very likely ways we can drive value there. Also, the city council has asked for audits of certain brand new vendors who are supporting homelessness efforts, who get multi-million-dollar contracts, and they came out of nowhere. And when the city council asked for audits, Bruce Harrell has blocked those audits. That smells very bad. The other thing, I think there's efficiencies to be achieved in the police force. We're spending $100 million in overtime. So first off, we get properly staffed.
It's a lot of money.
We can fix that problem, but also, I think we should far more automate speeding and traffic control in Seattle. I used to hate that because I got a few of those auto tickets, or running a red light or taking a right on red. But anyway, I really do think you don't want to take an armed officer and put him on traffic patrol.
Correct.
And also, if you automated that stuff, you'd eliminate the opportunity for conflicts between the officer and the driver, right? So, and escalations. So that would save a ton of money. The other thing is, I think there's a lot of administrative. If we had administrative personnel, for example, who took reports on break-ins, right, where there's no immediate danger, but the person wants to say, "Here's what I lost.
Right.
Here's what I saw." Cops, armed officers are going and doing that work, and that takes a ton of time. So let's those other sort of personnel cost less, and let's have those high-paid armed officers who put their lives at risk every day doing the armed officer work.
The operation of a police force.
Yeah.
And it seems like this particular department has created problems for a number of different mayors.
Sure.
No matter who the chief was.
Yeah.
And I found it fascinating recently. I mean, you hear reports of some of the assistant chiefs and deputy chiefs and leadership team, and they're going to the media and just certain things that I find, just behaviors. And I have spoken to mayors about that. I've spoken to several mayors about that.
Yeah.
I think that there should be a protocol in place. I don't think as the government affairs director of Bloodworks Northwest, I just don't get to go run to the media and spill my guts. I have a plenty of relationships with the media. That's not my responsibility. But people are doing this and they're leaking things and they're saying things, which I think is detrimental to the operation of a police department. It's just, to me, it's a fundamental thing in terms of
maybe. I mean, I think there's a place and a time. So, for example, somebody leaked a memo in 2022, that, oh, hey, by the way, the investigative force has stopped investigating adult sexual assault accusations. 48 victims over several months told the police, I was sexually assaulted, and nothing happened for months and months. And eventually a female sergeant wrote a memorandum saying, hey, this is absolutely unacceptable. And what they've done, they've taken, what do you call investigative guys?
Internal investigators.
So anyway, internal, they moved them from that to patrol in order to facilitate homelessness sweeps. So your priority, I mean, rape should be the number 2 priority for a police department. Number 1 is murder. Number 2 is rape. And again, what kind of attitude do we have towards women who are 80% of the victims of sexual assault, where we're allowing that to happen? Female officer writes a memorandum and complains about it, or escalates, say, hey, I want you to understand this condition. Somebody leaked it. And then there's a big investigation of her, the author of the memorandum. So what kind of message does that send that, hey, we don't want you writing memos, raising problems about things that are kind of trivial, like freaking sexual assault. It's just, I've been on the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center board and now the advisory board for over a decade. And when generally government doesn't do enough to prevent and prosecute sexual assault. And when I saw that, it just blew my mind. And I said, okay, let me think about who should be the next mayor of Seattle. That was a couple of years ago, but that's been in the back of my mind the whole time as a huge motivating force for me. And but a guy having a podcast like the SPOG president, that's different than somebody leaking something that really needed to be leaked.
Right. I get that. And this has become modern, and it's become a way of sharing ideas and different things in there. The leaking of information, the leaking of the going behind the chief's back. Those are the types of things. It's counterproductive in terms of a management thing. But in terms of the public good, do I really feel good about my police department?
Sure. Somebody like Carmen Best. I think Carmen Best was a fantastic police chief, and the CHOP kind of got her, and that I think was a matter of control issues, and what a huge loss for us.
Joe, 30 seconds. Why Joe Mallahan?
I'm the change maker that Seattle needs. I've got 30 years of change maker experience from community organizing and company management. And Seattle needs a mayor who an activist, leading mayor, and our current mayor has no vision and is not leading.
I can certainly see you're having a lot of fun.
I'm having a blast.
And it seems like you found yourself in this campaign. Best of luck, it turns out. And like I said, I think by running, you've won in so many different ways. So great to see you back out there.
Juan, great to have a chance to talk with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much for coming on, Juan, on Rainier, on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio. See you next time.